Hey, what is up guys? MKBHD here. So Weird Hardware is back. This is the Asus ZenFone 6. And this is one of the bigger surprises for phones this year, coming in at $500. So this isn't a full review of this whole phone, it's more of an impressions of what's turned into yet another way to avoid the notch, and what's ended up being one of the more interesting, impressive mid-range phones of 2019. So the ZenFone 6 has a 6.4-inch Full HD Plus IPS LCD display, rounded corners as you can see, but of course no notch, no cutouts, no hole punch, no interruptions. Now the ads show it as this kind of glorious full screen display from edge to edge and corner to corner. It's a little more of a chin and a bezel than that, but we'll go with it. So how do they achieve this in a $500 phone, and where do they put that front-facing stuff? Well, the fingerprint reader they didn't put under the glass, it's still on the back, and I still like this. It's lower and sort of in the middle, so it's super reachable. It's right where my finger naturally rests. It's the same place I like it on the Pixel phones. And the earpiece speaker is still up in this little slot here at the top, alongside actually an LED notification light, which is rare nowadays. There isn't much customization to it, but I like that it's there. And then the selfie camera, well, you've seen it by now. It's the main camera flipped around. It's kind of great. It's this massive chassis with dual cameras that sort of flips around when you go to selfie mode and takes the front-facing shot. And it's not quiet either. Those motors make a sound every time. But believe it or not, this is not the first camera or phone that I've used to do this. Back in 2013, I actually reviewed what's called the Oppo N1, this gigantic phone running CyanogenMod with like the world's largest forehead and chin, and a 13 megapixel camera in this bar up at the top that doubled as your selfie camera if you swiveled it around. The main difference, of course, was this one was manual, so you swiveled it around with your hands like a caveman. But this one from Asus in 2019 is electronic, it's motorized, and like I said, it's actually dual cameras. So you have a 48 megapixel f1.8 main sensor and a 13 megapixel ultra wide as well. And then because it's motorized, you have all kinds of extra features, but also all kinds of other stuff to worry about. So first of all, don't expect this to be water resistant anymore. There's no IP rating for this phone, and I just don't think you'd want to get any water near this piece anyway. And even dust or dirt getting in there could eventually be an actual problem. So you gotta be careful with it. And then of course, there's no way you want anything to impact it or have anything bend it. The motor already makes some pretty concerning noises when it encounters any resistance. But like I said, the motor actually gives you the ability to do a bunch of other interesting things. The first being the volume rocker isn't a shutter button anymore. It's actually a controller to control the exact precise angle that you want that camera to flip up at any given time, which is fascinating. And then the software button becomes a slider to do the same thing. So now you have this fine control over the exact angle of this swiveling camera chassis at any time. I don't know if that becomes kind of useful or just kind of creepy that you can hold it at whatever angle you want. But it seems firmly in the gimmick bucket to me, at least that feature. But then in panorama mode, there is a fully automatic panorama tilt. So you can take a vertical or horizontal panorama by just hitting the button, and it uses the motors to move the lens for you across the frame. This is actually kind of useful. I could see someone just holding the phone perfectly still, and it'll spin up to a full 180 degrees to flat or until you tell it to stop, essentially maximizing your panorama quality. Now, I don't know how often you take panoramas. Personally, I don't do this a ton, but it works really well, and it's kind of hilarious that you can get yourself into the panorama if you let it flip all the way around. So that is a clever use of the motor. And then there is object tracking mode. So if you're trying to take a video or something without moving the phone of a subject, you can have it latch on to what looks like just contrast-based object detection, and then as long as that subject moves to the left, basically, the camera can swivel over and keep it in the frame as long as you keep that video going. For me, this was pretty finicky from my experience since the contrast-based detection isn't perfect, but I guess I could see people taking videos maybe of themselves using this. And it also has drop protection as well. So you remember how the OnePlus would sort of retract the selfie camera if it detected free fall? This one, if it detects free fall, will just snap back that camera where it was to avoid it, landing weird and crunching it. It actually snaps back a little bit faster than it normally goes in and out in regular use, which I think is it just preserving the motor's life, but it's rated for 100,000 opens and closes. I feel like I've already opened and closed it like 1,000 times, but that's at least good for a couple years. And then the camera quality itself is actually pretty good. So I gotta be honest, I wasn't expecting much out of the ZenFone, but if the Pixel's camera is my A+, then this is a solid B- to a B. So it's gotten a couple software updates, and there are more coming. I think its main problem still is dynamic range and inconsistency. Like it can't really be trusted to take a great shot every time. And the ultra-wide camera, while it's nice to have, really is much worse than the main camera. But the main camera, especially as a selfie camera, is quite good. So shots are detailed, color is pretty good, it's edge-to-edge sharp, and then when you swivel it around to face yourself, of course, that's going to be right up there as now one of the best selfie cameras. So it's one of the only ones to actually get real background blur and depth of field that isn't fake on a selfie. So yeah, this whole camera mechanism by itself is fascinating, but there is, of course, the whole rest of the phone here that's low-key a really nice collection of choices and pieces to put together for a $500 phone. It has the high-end specs, Snapdragon 855, and up to 8 gigs of RAM, and it's an all metal and glass build, and it's hefty. Like, this is a chunky, solid phone, and a big part of that is because it has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery inside. That is absolutely massive, and I think that now makes it the largest battery cell in a phone I've ever used. It doesn't charge quite as fast as some others because of the way the cell is built, and it has 18-watt fast charging and no wireless charging, but that's much more acceptable when you can imagine how long a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with a 1080p display will probably last. That's exciting in a phone by itself, and I'm happy that phone batteries just keep getting bigger at this rate. There's also Bluetooth 5.0. There is a headphone jack. There's some pretty good speakers, which a lot of phones in this range don't have. A power button with this ring of blue paint around it, and then it has this extra button up above the volume rocker that by default is a Google Assistant button, so you can remap it to a couple other functions. So it's kind of halfway to being awesome, this extra button. So technically, yes, they let you customize it, but it's with a couple of sort of quick actions that they've pre-selected. I have single press to Google Assistant, double press to open or turn on the flashlight, which is cool. But they don't just let you open whatever app you want with it. That would have been what I really wanted, single press for Google Tasks, double tap for Google Assistant, something like that, but you can't do that. And then it's also kind of hard to reach. So I love having these extra customizable buttons, but this one is so high up that you need sort of a whole hand shimmy just to reach it. I kind of just wish it was on the other side of the volume rocker, which is blank, but hey, it's up there. So one of the biggest, most welcome changes on this whole phone is Asus finally dropping that massive Zen UI skin and bringing it way back to near stock Android, dropping all the bloatware, all the unnecessary duplicate apps and the ugly launcher and custom icons and themes and settings and things we didn't like. This is much better, much cleaner, and hopefully that spells faster software updates as well. So yeah, ZenFone 6. It's definitely one of the surprises of the year for me so far. Of course, being a pretty great all-around budget phone that happens to have one really impressive swivelly camera feature. Not to be clear, this is definitely still a workaround. This isn't like the permanent solution on our way to bezel-less phones. This falls in the category of notches and hole punch cutouts and pop-up cameras, but it's a pretty cool one. I guess this specific version of it with the swiveling camera, I don't hate it. Like, it's obviously not practical for long-term future solutions, but for me, I think I'm a sucker for camera quality over like anything else as far as practicality. Like, that's why I was so into the Pixel 3 for so long, despite so many of the issues that it had. So when I saw this, when this just flips around and becomes one of the best quality selfie cameras instantly, that to me made me kind of like it a lot more. But we'll keep an eye on this phone and a bunch more coming in the future. But as far as I can tell, definitely a pretty great all-around $500 phone. But let me know, would you get a phone with a swiveling camera like this? Would you be into it? Let me know in the comments section below. Either way, thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.